So my name is John Jones. I'm currently with Morse Data Enterprises. We specialize in Service Cloud voice implementations and call center setups.
And I'm Fred Barron with SkySync Solutions. We specialize in Salesforce integrations, and we do them very well. We do a lot of them.
And very quickly.
Very quickly. We can. I could go into an entire sales pitch, but I won't because you guys aren't here to hear a sales pitch. Let's keep going.
Yeah. Let's keep going. All right. So we're here to talk about architecture. So first, before we get too far into this, we want to know our audience a little bit. So if you're a manager, stand up. Managers? All right.
All right, we've got a few. Okay.
So
managers, okay, we're glad that you're here. We only have one thing to say to you. Make sure you give your people the time they need to do their job right. Okay? That's it. That's all we've got for the managers. But please don't leave because then you won't be in the giveaway.
All right, admins. Stand up if you're an admin. Awesome.
All right, a lot of admins.
Love it. Thank you for coming. You're going to learn a lot, and we're going to help you grow past admin.
All right.
That's our goal here.
Developers.
Oh, hang on. Stand up again.
Awesome.
All right. Got some good developers. You guys are going to learn something today too.
Yeah.
So.
Architects. Do we have any architects? You fill all the roles. One man job.
Some architects.
Awesome.
Hopefully we teach you something new for the architects today.
Yes. Any roles we didn't call out?
Anybody that didn't stand up?
QA? All right.
Business analyst. Do we have any
Awesome.
other business analysts? All right, some business
Sweet.
analysts.
Perfect.
Great.
All right.
All right.
We got stuff for all of you. And as we go through, we're going to call out slight differences in the way you think about architecture depending on that job function. Okay, so if you go looking up architectural design for software, not buildings, you will find, probably with buildings too, but you'll find a myriad of methodologies out there, and you'll see something similar to this, but sometimes there's 3 pillars, sometimes there's 7, sometimes there's 5. Just depends on whose version of it you're looking at. There's a lot of them out there. We've gone through and we chose these 3 as our main focus today. It's not everything, but these 3 are going to be a really strong foundation to get you started. So this is where we're going to focus. Trust, simple, and adaptable. And interestingly enough, in every session we've been in today, we have seen one or multiple of these 3 discussed throughout the conference. So that's been really cool to see this kind of reinforced as we go, and now we're going to bring it together for you. So let's dive into each one of these.
All right, so trust. Now, as we go through this, this is an interactive session. We are going to ask questions and we're going to expect answers, right?
And if you don't give answers, we'll start pointing at people.
We're going to start calling you out. So the question here is, who are we building trust with? Users. I heard users. Stakeholders.
Awesome.
Customers.
Donors.
I heard somebody say everybody.
Donors.
Yes.
We've got a nonprofit, so donors, that's important, right?
Yeah.
Those are your customers, right? They're spending their money to support your nonprofit. They're your customers.
The executive who's signing off on the project.
Thank you, the executive.
Yes.
That one is often missed, but the executive that's signing off on the project is a very important one.
Yes, it is. All right. So now we know who we're building trust for. What are we building trust for? I see some confused looks.
Harder question, isn't it?
Harder question.
Get buy-in.
Continued existence.
Okay. I like that answer.
Let me rephrase it a little bit different. What are you building? And you said, I'm going to pick on you, right? You said continued existence. What are you building?
What am I building? Generally, it is ease of life.
Ease of life.
Ooh,
We're building
I like that.
systems,
Yes.
right, that make life easier. I like that. That's going to tie in later. Very well,
Yes,
right?
I like
What
that.
we're building is we're not building, well, we're building on Salesforce, but we're not building Salesforce, right? We are building a system to make somebody's life easier. Right? What happens, I might be jumping ahead here. What
Nope,
happens,
you're right on target.
What happens when we break that trust?
They don't want to use it.
They won't use it.
And they won't come to you again.
And they won't come to you again. Right?
They may even drop your project mid-project or right before it launches.
I had a project that we spent 4 months building. And the company was absolutely excited about this. And we pushed it to production. And we said, launch it. And the executive staff came back and went, whoa, 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 hold on. We've completely scrapped that initiative. We're not using any of it. Right. And it wasn't a trust thing. It was just the business changed. But for a developer,
Right.
I'm like, come on. Right? This is months of work here. Okay?
Trust kind of goes
But
both
it goes
ways
both
in
ways.
reality. It really does. All right. So now let's jump down to the next thing. How? How do we build trust? Connections. That's a good one. Communication.
Communication.
Listening.
Listening. Right?
Consistency.
Consistency.
Follow through. Transparency.
Responsiveness. Transparency. Excellent, excellent answer.
Excellent.
All of that
excellent
stuff
answer.
builds trust.
I'm assuming some of you know who this is. Is he trustworthy? Do you trust him to build something for you?
I'll tell you what, he's consistent, right? Every single episode, there's a problem. He figures out how to solve it. He solves it, and then everything is great, right? That's our job.
Yeah.
What is the problem? Are we solving it? Everything is great.
All right, let's break trust down just a little bit more. There it is. 3 main areas we want to talk about for a couple minutes for helping to build trust. Security, compliance, and reliability. So, we're going to break up your roles just a little bit here. I'm going to start with admins. If somebody starts talking about security, what are you thinking of? What was that?
OWD.
OWD.
I heard
Permissions.
record visibility in the back.
Visibility.
Hackers.
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 Oh, that's a good one. Accessibility, yeah. Okay.
Okay, but I want to ask a question really quick because access is a big one, right? All of that's really big. But how many of you, as soon as somebody leaves the company, you deactivate their account? Right? How many of you have found an account that's still active from, 6 months ago, a year ago? Now let me make it a little bit worse. How many of you have found that account that's active and they're a system administrator account from a consulting company that you haven't worked with for 2 years? Right, so that's a big part of it is you're looking at the security. Do the right people have access to your system?
Yeah.
John's going to talk a little bit more about those permissions and profiles and field level security.
Yeah, those are critical, right? So when you're thinking about building those out, what's the general concept you're going for? How do you start building those out? How do you decide what permissions to give somebody? There's a specific term I'm after. We'll see if someone can find it.
You have to talk to them and find out what their
Okay.
needs are.
Discovery, that's part of it.
Yeah.
Start with least privilege.
There it
There
is.
it is. Least privilege.
Least privilege. What's easier? Taking permissions away or giving more permissions? Taking away. Some people like to live on the edge here. It's generally easier to give more, especially if they're brand new into the system. They never had more, then it's really easy to give more. But as soon as you start taking something away, man, you got fights coming on. All right, let's throw this to the developers for a minute. Developers, when somebody starts talking about security with you, what are you thinking of?
That sounds about right. Crickets. Right? All right. Let's take this a little bit further.
Yep.
Developers, how many of you do Lightning Web Components?
Okay.
How many of you do any kind of development for Experience Cloud? When you're building those Lightning components, are you thinking about what information am I displaying on that component?
Yep.
Should it be displayed? Is it following all those permissions and profiles and field level security that our admins are creating. Right? As developers, if we're opening up those holes that the admins are trying to plug, then we're going to make their jobs, we're going to make them really mad at us. Right? So that's one of the big things as with developers is let's make sure that we're not exposing information that we're not supposed to.
Yep. All right, couple of other pieces of security we want to touch on real quick. Let's talk about data encryption for a second. We know the platform itself has encryption built into it. That's nice and helpful. What if we've got PHI, PCI, PFI, HIPAA,
Or any of those other
fun acronyms involved? We may need to invoke other layers of encryption on top. We've got standard field encryption options. We've got Shield. There's other tools that may need to come into play there. And we're going to touch on that a little bit more in compliance in just a second as well. The last thing on security I want to touch on real quick, updates. Who has ever read an entire release notes update? A few of you. Now,
I saw
how
4 hands.
long ago was it since you read the entire release notes? 10 years ago, thank you. Back when the release notes were like 5 pages long, right? That's about the last time I read an entire one. How many of us try to stay on top of releases? At least somewhat? Yeah, most everybody. Good. It's hard now. There's a lot.
It is hard. You should at least be going in and looking at your section for your job. And some of you, I know there's some of you that stood up for multiple jobs, which is going to make it harder. But if you're an admin, go look at the admin stuff. If you're a developer, go look at the developer stuff. If you do multiple jobs, ask somebody else what's the most important thing for you to look at. Salesforce Ben does a great job of digesting all that down into a really simple, here's the really important stuff that you should be thinking about.
Yeah, so watch for those, go through them, follow the blog. Salesforce Ben is probably the top one, but I know there's a few others that also do similar things of pulling out, here's our top features out of this release. At least go through those and know the top things that are coming out. Okay. There it goes. Compliance. Yes?
I just wanted to add one thing to your list of resources. I think just staying in touch and keeping up with the release webinars that Salesforce does is a good.
Good call out.
Release webinars.
Those are
That
good.
is a good call out.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Absolutely. All right, compliance. This may be the shortest spot in the whole presentation, but it's important to cover. So if somebody talks to you about compliance, what are you thinking of? Legal.
Legal. That's it. We're done with compliance. But no, that's almost it, right? So here's the thing.
Really
Every industry has different compliance. If you are in healthcare, you've got HIPAA and other compliance. If you are in legal, there's different compliance. If you are in real estate, there's compliance. So the only thing we can really say about compliance is go figure out what your industry needs you to be compliant with. Right? There's so many different things that we can't cover it all, so we're not going to cover it.
We just want to call it out.
But
It's important
something
to
that
call
you
out.
need to be thinking about as you're architecting your systems. Are we compliant with what we need to be for what we're doing?
Yes, absolutely.
The only thing that I would say with that too is it's not always regulatory. It's not necessarily something that's governmental. Sometimes it's contractual. If you're working with partners or you have other sort of agreements with other companies that you work with. So.
That's fair.
Great. Yeah, so I'm going to kind of sum that up for the people in the very, very back of the room. So what he's saying is sometimes it's not legal, sometimes it's contractual. Right. I've been at a company where we've had a client that in their contract that said you can't use any offshore resources. Right. Well, how do we make sure we're complying with that contract? Right. Does your system do that? Right. Those are things you need to think about.
All right, reliability. This is a fun one, and we love that we saw this lovely phone yesterday. But we've got some more to add to it.
I've got some great stories about this phone, right? So yesterday he was saying, this phone, 100-hour battery life. Who would like a 100-hour battery life on their phone today? Right? Who would like a 20-hour battery life? I want mine to last more than a day. Right? So not this particular picture, but the Nokia phone. They went to a dump and they dug up a Nokia phone that had been sitting in a landfill for 15 years. and they turned it on. And it still had battery, and it came up, and if it had service, they probably could have made a phone call. That was you switched it. That was a reliable piece of technology, right? Are we building a reliable system? Is our system going to last and withstand the test of time?
All right, so let's move that to what we're working with. Is Salesforce reliable?
Oh, is it?
Wow.
Has anybody in this room ever seen a Salesforce outage? If you've been in Salesforce for more than 2 years, you've probably seen an outage, right?
And that was lots of fun for us, right?
Has
Yeah, it
Salesforce
happens.
ever had a data leak? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? They have. They had
It
a problem
happens.
with Community Cloud at the time, Experience Cloud now.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah.
Whichever
They
one.
do their best. They try. They try really hard,
they do.
right?
And they give us a
But
nice
even-
website, trust.salesforce.com, right? You can go look up your instance, and if there's something going on, you can find notifications about it, hopefully.
Now a little bit lower on that level, right? Salesforce, we trust that Salesforce is going to be reliable, and it usually is. They're really good about keeping it reliable. Are the system that you are building for your end users, is it reliable? Do your users have that trust that when they come in the morning and they log into Salesforce, they're going to be able to work?
So as we think about that, what makes your solution reliable? What things are you doing and thinking about to make sure that what you design and build is reliable?
Current data.
Testing? Okay, that's a good one.
Consistency.
Consistency. User adoption. Good one. I think I heard current data.
You know, I want
That's
to talk
good.
about. I want to talk about user adoption for just a second because that's an interesting one we usually don't think about with reliability. But if the system's not reliable, they're not going to use it, right? Yeah.
Yes,
So they will, right?
they will.
How many of you have a solution that when, and this happens, it happened to Salesforce, it's happened to AWS. How many of you have a solution that when something gets pushed to production, even though you've done all this testing, it breaks production and you can't have people use it? How many of you have a rollback solution? How long does it take you to roll back? 5 minutes? 10 minutes? 20 minutes? All right. Couple hours? Right? Hours?
Okay.
Okay. Right? I'm gonna put in a shameless plug for one of the sponsors here today. Own. They have their backup solution. You go in, do a snapshot before you do a deployment. Your deployment fails, it messes something up. Go into Own and say, restore that metadata. How fast is that?
Minutes?
Minutes? It does depend
Well,
on how much
it
you
does.
have to do.
Yes.
You know, but I mean, how much time does that take for you personally to actually go in and say restore that? Right? It's not
Yeah.
long.
It's much better than
Now there's other
alternatives.
things. If you're using a CI/CD process, is there a way to roll back? Right? If you're using source control for the developers, is there a way to roll that back quickly and get
Yeah.
those users back up and running? Because things are going to happen, but part of that trust is how fast can we solve that problem?
Yep, it is. All right. I think we got time. I'm going to throw one more story about failure recovery because it's kind of funny to me. But about a month ago, northern Utah had a major power outage. And we suddenly couldn't make our meal plans that we had planned for dinner that night because we had no power. So we thought, well, what's the easiest thing to make with no power? I got a barbecue grill in the back. Let's go see if we can find some hamburger and make some hamburgers. So we didn't know how big the outage was when we left the house. We just knew our neighborhood was out. So we went and headed down, and all the stores were out. The whole town was out, except for one business, Macy's grocery store. They had power, not full power, but they had power. They were open. Their cash registers were running. They could even run our debit cards through a major power outage. And that just caught me totally off guard. A grocery store had a backup plan in place. They had enough power to keep the store going and to let people buy stuff. And guess where everybody in town was going?
Because everybody else had gotten off work because they didn't have power. So
The stores closed down. People went home, had no power. What do? Go to Macy's and get some food. So that just really caught me. I was like, that's important. Have a backup plan. All right.
We get to see another phone.
Yes, another phone. We'll talk about that one in just a minute. But the second pillar, simple. So we've got trust pretty well nailed down. We know what we're doing, right? How many of you would consider your platform, your system, simple? I see a couple more hands besides yours. So why would you consider it simple?
We don't have a lot of different processes
Okay.
and straightforward.
Awesome. That's good. What about you?
Yeah, the same.
Same thing?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you?
Very, very little customization. Almost everything is standard Salesforce.
That
I
makes it
have
simple.
3 custom objects and a little bit of Apex. I think that's
That's
simple.
it. That's
But
pretty
for my business, that's what I need right now.
Right.
I know
So-
it's going to get more complicated.
It will. So for the rest of you, why is it not simple? Processes are not simple.
Process is not simple.
Too many hands in the pot? Ooh, I like that answer.
Tech debt. I like that answer.
Yeah. Tech debt.
Stakeholders, multiple business divisions.
That's a good one. Who likes this little diagram up here at the top? Top right.
That is the schema builder. Doesn't that look fun?
Does anybody know
No.
exactly what that might be? That's actually something that you all know. Standard Salesforce. That is
That is-
every object in
That
the
is
standard
no
Salesforce.
customization in Salesforce. And that's what you get out of the box, right? So let's go back to that again. Is your system simple? No. It is not. All right, so simple is intentional, engaging, and automated. So I want to talk about this phone right here, the BlackBerry. Okay? How intentional and engaging it was. There was somebody that was hired for BlackBerry, and their job was the click counter. Imagine this job. Their job was to take that phone and click and do things on it. And they would count how many clicks does it take to get somewhere. And if it took more than 3 clicks, they were going back and redoing the user interface. Okay? Their entire intention of this phone was to make it simple. Very intentional, very engaging. And what was interesting is we were putting this presentation together. If you look at that, how familiar does that look? That looks like my iPhone now, right? Little icons on the screen. I get to click on one. It comes up in it. I get to watch, YouTube videos.
So may not have realized it at the time, but they really kind of modernized and pioneered our current smartphone designs.
And how many of you have a BlackBerry now?
I was hoping to see at least one hand. That's all right.
That's okay. We still like what
It's good.
they did.
Yes, it's good. It's good. So this is the power of simplicity though, right? It's intentional. Everything you do, once you get a requirement, the first thing you should be doing, I'm thinking of it as I'm getting the requirement, but you need to go write down every possible option to complete that requirement. Write them all down, no matter how ridiculous they are.
Now managers, where were our managers? Okay, this was the part for you. This is going to take time. Let your people do this process. Because
need
if
to go
they
through that.
skip that process, we're going to end up with that tech debt.
Right?
We're going to end up with things not working. The architecture is not going to be there. Right? They've got to take the time to be able to figure out what is it that we are building.
What's the best option to build it based on the requirements I've got? And that's why you're going to list them all out so that you intentionally pick the best one to go with. If you just jump to one, you might miss a good option. So write them down. Take the time to be intentional about it. And ultimately, you want something that's engaging. We heard user adoption mentioned earlier, right? Okay, here's an example for you. If we were to ask you to log your time on a task with this screen, who would complain about it? Who likes that?
Who in here thinks that they could not log their time on this task? You put up your hand.
I mean, I feel like it's like overly complex for what you're asking. Like you shouldn't, there's so much that should be
Sorry.
intuitive because the user's logged in and they just put in a start time and an end time, depending on what.
Okay, Okay,
Okay,
that's
fair.
that's a fair point. So what she's
That's
saying
fair.
is that the user should be able to put in a start time and an end time. Okay, and we're going to go back to intentional. This is from my org. Okay, and I intentionally took that component off of this page to make it more simple. Okay,
You replaced it with this
I
one up here.
replaced it with that start timer, stop timer. I want my people to go in when they start a task, start time. When they get done, stop time, because that's the most accurate way to get time. If people go in later and enter their time, it's not always going to be right, and you're going to lose time, right? So an intentional, it's a great point, but a very intentional choice on the design, right?
Yes.
Has anybody ever forgot to hit the stop sign?
Not yet. It's possible, right?
It's very possible.
It's very possible. There's some other, I won't go into them, but some other design things that timer won't run forever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another thing we see, the number of fields on here. Both of us have seen numerous times we go into orgs and they have hundreds of fields and you're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling down a page layout to get the information filled out. And what do the end users think of those layouts? I hate them.
What's your adoption on those layouts? They're probably using it because they absolutely have to, right? I worked for a company that had, get this, 300 custom fields on the opportunity. They had 280 of those fields on the page layout. It was a lot. And once we actually went through and figured out which ones were being used, we narrowed that down to 70 custom fields.
Now, to me, 70 still sounds like a lot for a page layout. But we've got some really cool tools now to help us with that. Dynamic forms, paths. Limit down your fields to the role, the person that's looking at it. Only give them the fields that are pertinent to the person looking at the screen. If you've got an opportunity and finance is looking at the screen, they don't need all the sales stuff. So hide those fields.
It goes back to that least permission.
Yeah. Use those tools and simplify it for the end users.
That's our.
Okay.
We're getting our.
We got to keep moving.
Yep.
Adaptable. So let's talk about roadmaps for a second. Who has a roadmap?
How many
Few
of
of
you
you.
have a roadmap in your company?
Awesome. How far out do your roadmaps go? 2 years?
2 years?
Wow.
Who said 2 years? Wow,
That's impressive.
that is impressive.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
4
4
years?
years.
Okay, now how many of those roadmaps, especially those ones that go out years, right? That you're like, okay, we got this all mapped out. We know exactly what we're going to be doing for the next 2-4 years. And 2 months later, an executive comes in and says, hey, I've got this new project. Push everything to the side. I want you to work on this.
That
How
never
often
happens,
does that
right?
happen?
All the time.
All the time, right?
I find this term interesting that we call it a roadmap, and roads are static and paved in, but roadmaps are not static. They flex, they migrate. So how do we work with that, right? We're trying to build systems that are good, and for this, we're looking at something that's resilient and scalable. But how do you build something when you don't know what the requirements are going to be in the next 2 months or 2 years, right? So, some things to think about. This one is really thinking about your design and looking forward as you're designing it. How is this system going to handle whatever increase might be coming to it, right? I'm building a system that right now takes in 500 records a day. Well, sales is projecting that they might increase that to 5,000 a day in the next 6 months. So will the system I'm building handle that increase? And consider that. Okay. Take a look at this.
This is one of my
All of
favorite
you should
slides.
be able to kind of follow this and know what's going on here, I'm expecting. So look at this for a second and think about that question. Is this adaptable? Based
Is
solely
it-
on what you see.
And those two
Is this
criteria,
adaptable?
is it resilient? And can it grow? Is it scalable?
Any thoughts? I see some heads kind of slowly shaking. A little bit.
They're looking for the problems.
They're looking for the problem.
Fault handling
Absolutely.
tasks. I'm glad you brought that up
Yeah.
because we're going to talk about that in just a second.
That's good.
Well, something along those
Well,
lines.
sort of. Okay. Throw the extra context on here.
Okay, so overall, right, could be some scaling issues, but overall this is a fairly simple flow. We think this would be nice and perfect, right? Now, what you don't see is the other automation on the project. This is on the task, or no, this is on the project. You don't see the automation on the task. The project updates, it updates the task. The task had automation. Guess what? It told the project to update. Right? That's the problem that you don't see in this flow. Okay? So the point here is you need somebody or a couple of somebodies that know what your system is doing. Right? They don't have to know everything. They don't have to know every single line of Apex, but they need to know what is the automation that we have that's running on a lead? What automation do we have running on a contact? If we add this new thing, is it going to break something else? And they're not going to know it. They're not going to know that every single time, and that's why we come back to QA, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's also why we come into documentation.
Coming back, somebody said earlier, basically the silos, right? The different pieces of a company.
Right.
I've seen companies that have hired 3 different consulting firms to work on 3 different parts of their Salesforce org. One does sales, one does service, one does something else, right? Well, how many objects does sales and service use together? Right. Who's coordinating that? If you've got 2 completely different companies working on your org, even if it's not companies, if you've siloed them off into teams, who's making that coordination between those teams?
If you don't watch that from a high level, you are going to run into problems. So that's where the real architect position starts to really play into companies. And that's where I see a lot of companies trying to figure out, okay, we feel like we need an architect, but where do they actually fit? That's where they fit. They're overseeing the whole thing to make sure that your teams are not breaking down your system as they're trying to meet all the requirements coming in.
Right. If you think about it of building a building, the architect's the one who says the pipe goes there and the electrical goes there so that you're not putting a nail through the plumbing, right?
Right.
5 minutes.
Okay. There's one piece that we skipped over, and I think it was actually back on the simple pillar, but we're gonna throw it in here because I think it fits here as well. Automation.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna throw out the fun question. What should we automate? Everything. I
We have
love
AI,
it.
we can automate
right out of the
everything.
bat.
Let's do that. We're done. Let's go home.
Is it really everything though? No.
Somebody said repeatable processes.
Understood.
Okay.
That's fair.
Right. Repeatable processes and processes that have a high likelihood of being wrong. Okay. I'll give you a quick story. We're running out of time, so this has got to be a quick story. I worked at a company that they hired somebody to take this was before I got into Salesforce. So they had somebody that would take all of the orders off the back end, off their website. They'd enter them into QuickBooks every single day. And then they would cut checks to their vendors and they'd mail them out. That entire process took that person 4 to 5 hours a day. Okay? Half their time was spent doing that. And more often than not, something was wrong. They put a number in wrong. They sent a check to the wrong vendor. Something was wrong. We automated the process, including printing the checks and getting them signed, 10 minutes. How many problems did we have after that with the information being wrong? None. It went away. We automated it. Right? That was something that was repetitive and had a high risk of being wrong. We got to keep going.
Now, that doesn't mean we're going to be careful about our automations, but it also means that's where you're going to spend most of your time designing and building. So again, managers, give them time to do it. It takes time to work through that, especially to make sure that they're not causing something that's going to break. Okay.
We're almost.
We're doing good. We're doing good. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, architectural design for systems, not just Salesforce, any system. I work with AWS and Salesforce both right now. It's the same concepts. And you can go look this up. Salesforce has these well-architected modules and things out there. Go take a look at them. They're excellent. Build on this. Best practices. Now, we're going to say something that might be slightly controversial here. Best practices are great. Follow best practices most of the time.
And if you are going to not follow best practices, be very, very intentional about it and know why you are not following best practices.
Yes, absolutely.
There are some times, they're not best rules, they're best practices, right? But we're not telling you to go out and just break the best practices. Be intentional about when you do that.
Yep. And some things for you to just keep in your mind as you're designing. How to show trust in the solution. Communicate. Document. I know you've heard documentation a few times throughout the conference. I'm a huge documenter. You can ask him. I give him, he loves getting design requirements from me.
I love working with him. The documents he gives me, I can look at them and I can go, yep, I can very easily write a task off this, send it to a developer.
I document everything.
Sometimes
All
I
of
just
it.
send his documentation to the developer.
End user results we've mentioned, security requirements, reliability. Keep all of that in mind as you're designing and as you're thinking about what you're doing. And the last thing, fun thing, we've in all of our dry runs, people always say, hey, you left that tag on there. Well, we did that on purpose. Very intentional decision. Take what we taught, take what you've learned from us, and we expect you to add to it. There's more out there. This isn't all of it.
Go learn. This is the start. Go learn. All right. Now
Thank you.
we're to the point that you all came here for the giveaway, right?
All right.
So,
Let's see, is everybody entered? Do we need to give somebody a chance to enter real quick? We're good?
we're good.
All right,
Okay,
we're good.
So
We're gonna load up the hat. Did I hit it? Yep, I did. Okay.
Okay. So
Here
we're
we
gonna
go.
take up all those tickets. Get your tickets out. We're about to draw that number.
Here
Let's
it
do
comes.
All right. Here it comes. 2,
3. Good guess. 6.
6,
0.
8.
8. Jesse Hendricks. Right here. You get the secret sauce. Compliments of my oldest daughter. She's got a shop on Etsy.
Yep.
She does that stuff. Girl's amazing. I can't believe what she does.
Now, if any of you have questions or you want to connect with us, you notice we did not put our LinkedIn QR codes on there. Come up and talk to us. We're happy to connect to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.